Thank you so much for giving me the privilege to be the representative of our church at our annual conference. It was held in Calgary, and we had a great time together. This is just a picture of the church we were located in, and Mike Fast was the one, he's one of our missionaries, he was the one that took this picture, and so there's a big picture of him in the front, but this was our gathering. What do we do at these meetings? We have a time for the business of the denomination, and so we hear reports and we look at budgets, and one of the most important motions that we made this year was the denominational statement on gender and on marriage. This has taken several years of prayer and thought and work, and it has been supervised by a lawyer, and it was accepted at our conference this year to become the statement for our denomination. We were encouraged to bring this home to our local churches, to present it to the boards, and ask each church to have this as their statement as well. It's just a way to protect our church and to protect our pastors and leaders. So I will be presenting that motion to our board, and they will be voting on it as well. The theme this year was taken from a verse in the book of Old Testament book of Esther, for such a time as this. If you know the story, it's a fascinating one. This Jewish woman, young woman, was chosen to become the queen of Persia, just at a time when all the Jews were to be put to death in Persia. And her mentor, uncle, the man that was kind of her guardian, said to the queen, Esther, you must go to the king and beg for the life of your people. Who knows that maybe you were placed in this position for such a time as this. And so Queen Esther, knowing that she could be put to death because you don't go to the king unless he invites you, she said, I will go, and if I perish, I perish. And so she went to the king, and I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story because I want you to go home and you read the book of Esther. It's a fascinating book. But the theme was for such a time as this. And I want to tell you one story. We heard so many. I could take over the morning, but I know that I would have to answer to my husband when I got home, so I won't do that. But let me tell you one story. The Baptist General Conference have quite a significant work in the country of Armenia. And a young man, Muslim man, came to know Jesus as his Savior. And he had a great passion to reach other Muslims for Jesus, and particularly in the country of Iran. Now, you know, Armenia is up here, Iran is just below there. And so he said, I am going to go to the country of Iran, and I'm going to tell people about Jesus. And the fellow believers in Armenia said, don't go, because you will be arrested, you will be thrown in prison, and you may be killed. But he said, no, I have to go. I have this passion. I have to tell these Muslims about Jesus. And they said, okay, if you have to go, go alone. Don't take your family with you. But in a matter of time, both him and his wife and his children went down to Iran. They were both arrested. The children were sent back to the care of an aunt and uncle. At this time, we're not sure where the wife is. She was received some shock treatments, terrible treatments, and we've lost track. We don't know where she is right now. But this young man, I'm going to call him Joseph just for security reasons. Joseph was taken and thrown into prison and treated horrendously, just horrendously. But what he did was he started telling his fellow prisoners about Jesus. And a young prisoner accepted Jesus as his Savior. And after several weeks, he went to Joseph and he said, Joseph, you're my pastor, right? And Joseph said, well, I guess so. He said, I want to be baptized. And Joseph said, I can't baptize you here. First of all, we have no water to do this. And secondly, there are security cameras everywhere. They would see us. We would be killed instantly. This young man said, I know one place where there's no security cameras. And Joseph said, where's that? And he said, in the mosque. In the mosque, they are protected. There's no security cameras. And so Joseph and this young man went, and he was baptized. He just literally threw a cup of water on him. He was baptized in a Muslim mosque. A few weeks later, this same young man came back to Joseph and said, "You're my pastor, right, Joseph?" "Yes." He said, "I want to take communion." And Joseph said, "How can I give you communion?" Again, security cameras. Where are we going to get the elements for communion? And the young man said, "I'll save bread and we'll buy some juice." They were able to buy some juice. They went back to the mosque and the young man received communion. Can you believe in one of the darkest countries in the world where evil abounds, this young man in a Muslim mosque was baptized and received communion? And I thought of that verse, the gates of hell will not prevail. Just that one little part of that verse, the gates of hell will not prevail. And when God decides to do something, he will do it wherever he chooses, even in a Muslim mosque. Do you know that there are more Muslims coming to know Jesus today in the last 15 years than ever before in recorded history? These Christian people are in such a time and in such a place for this. But then we started to talk about Canada. Do you know that in Canada we have, close to 40 million people? We have a total in all across the country and territories, only 5,770 evangelical churches. And by that I mean churches that believe the Bible and preach the Bible. So that means that there are roughly 6,500 people for every church, every evangelical church in Canada. So if we are reaching our country, we should have 6,500 people here today. The average size of the evangelical church today in Canada is 75. I was thinking back, I can remember speaking this and hearing people saying, "Oh, if only I lived 100 years ago when people respected God and people went to church and Christianity was important and a relationship with God was important." But I realized that I did not live 100 years ago. I have been placed in this geographical place right now and in this time historically for such a time as this. And for some reason, God called each one of you and me for such a time as this. And when I think about what is happening in Canada today, we are no longer called a Christian country. We are no longer even called a post-Christian country. We are now considered a non-Christian country. And it gives me great fear. I fear for myself. I fear for my family. I fear for my church. I fear for my faith. But we have not been given a spirit of fear. We have been given a spirit of courage and strength. And so with that, we stand strong together, knowing that God has called us for such a time as this, to know God and to make him known. So thank you again for allowing me the privilege of experiencing this wonderful week with God's people.